for accepting to join us today.
Sure.
Interestingly, it's our very first Hangout session for Pistorius.com. For those of you that are not familiar with Pistorius.com, what we try to do is to create a platform where small businesses can get knowledge and be able to build their businesses and grow better, basically. I understand that a lot of people, when you talk about startups, a lot of people think that it's only tech businesses that are startups, basically. But I think differently. I think that every business that is at an early stage is a startup, basically. So technology is just an enhancement to whatever business there is you want to do. So that's my take, and that's why we're doing Pistoria. So this cuts across all the whole spectrum, the business spectrum. We're not just talking to tech people here, okay? Basically, so on Pistorius.com, we don't just talk to tech people alone. We talk to everybody in the business community, especially in the small business world, basically. Okay, so that's the intro about Pistorius. So I'm going to backdate a bit. You were with us at Startup South last year, November.
Yep, long time ago now.
Okay, so it was such a nice time, talking with you then at Startup South. And I know that for those of you who wouldn't know, maybe I'll just let Lexi introduce herself, and then we can take up the conversation.
Sure. So a little bit of the background on how I came to Nigeria. First, to begin this off, I'd spent a lot of time always working in asset management, but in the US, and decided to really proactively shift my career to focus on Africa. And that brought me out here to Nigeria to join a firm called Verod Capital, which is focused more on the growth capital investments in kind of the larger deals in private equity. But while I was there, I developed a relationship with a man named Issam Darwish, who has built Africa, and actually it's the largest in all of Europe and the Middle East, the largest telco infrastructure company. And he's been extremely successful, particularly in Nigeria, and wanted to take kind of the expertise he had and the relationships he built and apply that, partnered with his capital to kind of build an ecosystem of technology, media, and telecommunications companies, mostly focused on Nigeria, but we will look at Pan-African opportunities as well. So I have been working to launch that vehicle, and now we've done a couple deals so far, and looking to kind of continue to do more aggressively in the future. And yes, we're based in Lagos. I'm here all the time. I don't usually get out very much, but actually this month I'm traveling quite a bit. So.
Okay, thank you, Lexi. While at Startup South, you had mentioned a couple of interest you were already working on at Singularity. I would assume that some of them have panned out right now. So I don't know if you want to give us an update on those.
Sure, I can talk about just a couple of our portfolio companies that we've closed on in the past couple months. So
yeah.
we have a company called Pharma, which is a e-prescription company, but it's particularly interesting because they are very much focused on data collection and analysis of the end consumer. And that's one thing that I'm very interested about here, is collecting data, because especially relative to the other markets that I've worked in, data is very hard to come by, and that means there's a huge amount of value there. So that's one we're very interested in. Similarly, on the data side, there's a company we're invested in called Soko Insights, and they are somewhat like a Thomson Reuters, who've kind of done this for other markets, and Zawiya did it for the Middle East. They collect business information and profiles and offer that to customers on a subscription basis. So, their customers are other businesses looking for suppliers, trade partners, potential acquisitions, and likewise investors looking to invest in companies or do market research. And we also have recently done an investment in an ad tech company, which utilizes the lock screen of the phone to push content, both advertising and entertainment content, but meanwhile also giving the users the benefit by not having to burn through their data to access this content. So it actually pays them back in airtime for using the app.
Okay, cool. I'm sure that's slide.
Yes, right.
Okay, so that's Kobe Munich's company.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I'm particularly interested to know, because I'm sure a couple of the viewers would also like to know, what are the specific attributes of these businesses? I mean, you've mentioned that you're interested in data.
Very much.
But a lot of the business owners that will be listening to us would want to know what are the specific attributes of businesses that you want to invest in?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that are really important for us. Look, we are sector focused on technology, media, and telecommunications. Other funds do not have that kind of limitation, but that's something that we certainly are focused on. But like you mentioned before, it can be kind of a tech-enabled platform. So we look to that. We certainly look at the quality of the management team, and to me that means whether they've actually worked in the industry that they're trying to build a business for and understand it, and also that they understand their consumer and that they kind of have the business acumen to support and run a business, as well as kind of the financial know-how to speak to me as an investor and make sure their governance processes are in place. We look for very scalable business models. So there's a lot of things that I've seen that are certainly probably have the first two characteristics that I just mentioned and are very good companies and are making money. But for us, we certainly look for business platforms that are not just kind of a small business that will stay in Lagos, for example. We want something that can grow beyond Lagos and be Pan-African and potentially global.
Okay, so basically you're looking at businesses that are able to scale across Africa.
Yes.
Okay, cool. The other thing I'd like to find out is you have a background in tech, you're focusing in FCMG, basically.
Mm-hmm.
How did that shape you to what you're doing now?
So actually my kind of professional career has gone from bigger to smaller. So I certainly started, I started working at a hedge fund covering publicly traded companies in the US. And then I moved to kind of the private equity side, looking at, companies focused on, my sectors of focus were mostly financial services, but also manufacturing, and we did some oil and gas too, but much bigger size. And then now, it's kind of even moved me into the smaller space, which is these very early sort of venture sort of deals. So actually it's been a learning curve for me, because what I think to be true now is that these small businesses, and it's not for lack of understanding or capacity, in some cases it might be, but more that the budget is so limited that they don't have the capacity to kind of put all of the processes and structure in place to kind of implement, efficiency and governance. So therefore it requires a lot more communication and kind of hands-on commitment. You can't just give your capital and walk away. So that's certainly been a learning curve for me because I don't really come from that background. I come from very much an investor background.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, I was going to remind you of something you said at Startup South when you were asked the question, how you support, what plans you have to support the small businesses, and you had actually said that you don't have the structure to.
We don't really, and to be honest, we don't really have the team either. So what we do still, even now, look, we certainly have the ability to help businesses with their networks and connections and anything that needs to be done on the regulatory or legal side. We have that capacity. We don't really have the capacity to be an incubator sort of model. Like a great example, I wouldn't necessarily call them an incubator, but Venture Garden Group certainly, their model is kind of invest, incubate, grow, and they take much bigger equity stakes than we usually do, and have a lot more influence in the company, but really work with them very, very closely to kind of grow those business models. And because we don't have the capacity to necessarily do that, unless it's within our specific expertise, which is telecommunications infrastructure, because of our founders' expertise in that space, we look to co-invest with partners that usually do kind of understand that and can work with the companies on kind of their, if it's a media company, a media investor who's done a lot of work, or can kind of, connect them to other companies in their portfolio that are relevant as well.
Okay, for the e-prescription company, sorry, what's the name again? I can't remember the name you called.
Pharma.
Familiar.
Pharma.
Pharma.
Yes.
Good. For that, who is the founder of that company?
So he's actually Ghanaian. His name is Greg. He built. The company is actually incorporated in the U.S., which you'll find a lot of founders actually do that because it's much easier to attract foreign capital when your entity is not in Nigeria or Ghana or another country. So he's incorporated in the U.S. and he's built his company first in Ghana and then expanding in Nigeria and also in East Africa as well. So they actually, we also have office space. So their team actually works out of our office. So we're very close to them on a daily basis.
Oh, okay. So let me take on something you just said.
Yeah.
It is easier to get investment if you incorporate in the U.S.
Yes, for foreign investors, for sure. Unfortunately, it's probably harder for local capital because if you're, let's say you are a Nigerian company, if you are really early stage, you're probably going to get most of your money from angel investors who are going to be local. In that sort of situation, they're going to want a local entity because there's lots of restrictions that make it very difficult for them to invest in the US. However, if you are a company that has then grown to a stage where you're looking for institutional investors, could be local investors, it could be somebody like us or somebody like Echo BC or one of the other guys. Most likely they have an entity set up outside of Nigeria anyway, so we're investing. It's much easier for us to invest in some place where we know we're not going to be faced with capital restrictions, getting our money out if we need it, and also having kind of the assurance on the legal side.
Okay, so I was going to ask you about the fact that the founders of the other two companies are not Africans.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So
sorry. Is there a coincidence between your article today and that correlation? Is there a correlationship with your thinking and that's my observation?
Well, I wouldn't say that between the two there's a correlation. However, I have to say, like, a strong piece of I'm focused on business models that have a strong team, a great business model, and that are going to make money and that are African focused. That doesn't mean they necessarily have to be African founders. And even if they are African founders, they don't have to be incorporated in Africa. And I would actually, in most cases, prefer that they're not. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. Different funds will have different models with that. You know, they'll maybe want to support an entrepreneur just because he's African. To me, that doesn't matter. I just want to build a very, I believe even, I mean, we can talk about building the tech ecosystem. I mean, generally building strong companies that are based here in Africa is a positive thing no matter who's running them. And we certainly encourage all of our companies, both of these guys, actually, majority of their employees are local now. So they certainly are pushing that. But yeah, Corbin actually is African. He grew up in Botswana, but he's a white guy.
Okay, cool. Is it possible that so sorry, I'm getting kind of distracted.
Okay.
Now, I was going to ask you in your article, you made mention of the fact that there's a dearth of local investors, basically.
Yes, there certainly is.
And from you're passionate about, you sound a bit more passionate about seeing more local investors come up.
So this is something that I've really wanted and have been trying to push. Is really kind of push the angel investing community. I mean, as you know, very active ecosystem. There's a lot of these early stage companies that. Did I lose you? There's a bunch of these early stage companies that can't, you know, they're not far along enough to get institutional capital. So in other markets, it would be the angel investing community that would kind of support those companies from an early stage and help them grow and get to a point where they can then attract institutional capital. So yeah, there's a couple of things we've been looking to do to kind of instigate more of that. One idea that we've had is to kind of set up a fund that would partner kind of seasoned institutional investors with local angels, partner the capital together, and then those seasoned investors would go through the whole investment and due diligence process, and the other investors would kind of, it would be a learning by doing sort of thing. Sorry, can you excuse me 1 second?
Yeah. Is any of you watching? You're watching? Oh. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay, cool. So you is there any particular program that you can, because that's did you hear me?
Sorry, can you repeat that? The network went out a little bit.
Is there a particular program that you've put in place to see to it that this local investors come up?
So we're trying. We are at a stage now where it's still early. I wouldn't expect anything to be launched for the next year. These sort of things take a while. And as you probably know, Lego's Angel Network has been trying to do a bit as well. I think the problem, though, is not necessarily access to deals, which I think Lego's Angel Network is trying to solve. It's more the confidence of angels to put their money there when they don't necessarily understand technology. They don't really understand how to analyze a deal or how to protect their investment. So they need to see that they can actually make money from it first.
Okay. From the last time we spoke, you had said, are there more deals on the pipeline apart from the 3 you've mentioned?
Yeah. So fortunately, we had a couple of deals recently that didn't really make it through the last cut. They took a good part of the year to try to work through. But so far we've turned a couple of them down, and there's one that is still kind of in the pipeline, and it's very much in the telco infrastructure space. Extremely early though. They have a really amazing technology, but no revenue yet. But it could be a game changer globally. So generally that's I would say we are still looking for probably some good opportunities to come up, and certainly like to see things. Spaces that I'm really interested in now are fintech. I like a lot in the fintech space. I still like media a lot, but I have not really been able to get very comfortable around anything that's done like music or video distribution. I'm still concerned about a timing issue with that one. Yeah, and I like, again, models that collect data on the user, especially the mobile users. You would be surprised how little information the networks actually have on their subscribers.
Okay, cool. But we would have to. I have a student question. I think the question I have here you practically covered. And because of your itinerary, we have to just let you go for now.
Yes.
I'm hoping that we would have another time to discuss in depth. I mean, the glitch kind of disrupted the plan. Yeah, but I believe that people will have learned a couple of things from this chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to join.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thanks for setting it up, Uche.
Sure.